everybody! So there's a total spring in my step today because spring is coming. I can smell it, I can feel it, the snow is starting to melt, and I'm getting questions about things to make for the nicer weather. So I thought we would go with another wearable. I'm talking about this really simple cotton headband. And it's not just a typical headband, it's a headband with ties. This is great if you have short hair like me, you're growing it out, maybe you need a haircut, or if you have long hair too, or if you have a head that doesn't fit regular sized headbands, or if hairbands give you a headache after a while, or if you've got a lot of hair and you have trouble finding something that stays on it, or if elastic headbands go boing off your head like they tend to do with me. So this is going to solve all those problems. And it doesn't have to be plain, you can decorate it too. And in this tutorial, I'm going to show you a whole bunch of pretty little ways to decorate your hairbands. So let's go to the craft table and make ourselves something to wear. In order to make our headband with ties, we are going to use a cotton yarn. This makes it really washable and it wears well and it doesn't pill up and it won't felt on you, and it'll pretty much continue to look the same way it does long after the day that you've made it. So I recommend cotton for this project. And today I'm using just some simple Bernay Handcrafter cotton yarn. You don't need a whole heck of a lot, so if you've got sort of half a skein left over, or even just a new skein you want to try, that's more than enough. I'm going to use my 4.25 millimeter hook. This is also known as a G6, and I think the UK have something similar. It's a size 7, although I think that might be associated with a size, either size 4 or size 5. I can never remember, and all the hook sizes are a bit higgledy-piggledy, so anything in this general area will work just fine. You're going to want a yarn needle and a pair of scissors, and let's get started. We're going to start with a slip knot, and you can make a slip knot any way you're comfortable. I like to sort of make mine on my hook, and make sure it's not too tight. You want it to be able to move around on your hook. And we're going to begin by chaining 41. And a chain is just simply wrap and pull through the loop. Wrap, pull through the loop, and you want 41 of these. 38, 39, 40, 41. And if you didn't count all the way along, it's a good idea to go back and make sure that you count your chains to ensure that you have 41. Now we are going to single crochet. Remember, you always skip the first loop from the hook because that needs to be your turning chain. That will bring your work up to the height that it needs to be. So you work into the second chain from the hook, and into this chain we're going to single crochet. And you're going to single crochet in every chain from here all the way back to the beginning. And at the end of row 1, you will have 40 single crochet stitches. Alright, I'm just nearing the end of row 1. And if you haven't been counting all the way along, make sure you go back and count. You should have 40 single crochets all the way across your band. We're going to move on to row 2. So we're still single crocheting, which means we need to chain 1. That's our turning chain. Turn your work, and we're going to single crochet all the way back across the length of row 2. You're going to start into that first stitch, but if you're looking across the top of it, ignore your turning chain, work into that second stitch from the hook, which is technically the first real single crochet. Single crochet into that, and keep on going. I am just nearing the end of row 2, and if you haven't been counting, make sure you go back and count. You should have 40 stitches across the top of row 2. And remember that that last stitch is always a bit funny. It doesn't necessarily look like the other ones, but it is there, and it's a bit awkward to work. But make sure you count it too, otherwise your edges won't be nice and straight. So take a moment and count. You should have 40 single crochets across the top of row 2, and that gives you rows 1 and row 2 each at 40 single crochets. Now we're going to break off and do one of the ties. So from here, instead of chaining 1, we're going to chain 41. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep going until you've chained 41. 37, 38, 39, 40, 41. So I've chained an additional 41 chains. That's off the end of row 2, and this is going to be our first tie. Now you could, if you wanted, snip it here, but then you'd have like a little tail end. So to avoid that and to make the whole thing one long piece, we're going to slip stitch all the way back. So you're going to skip the first chain because that's a turning chain, and instead of single crocheting, we're going to slip stitch. So you put your hook through the second chain from the hook, or from the loop, just second chain from the hook, just as though you were going to single crochet. Wrap the yarn just like you would single crochet, but instead of making a new stitch, you pull it back through both loops. And that first one's always a little tricky. So then you move to the second chain, wrap your yarn and pull it back through everything. Move to the third, and so on and so on. You're going to slip stitch all the way back across the top of your 41 chained length, and remember the 1 on the end counts as your turning chain. So you will have 40 slip stitches up the length of this tie, and that will take you all the way back to what is technically the end of row 2. Once you get back to the end of row 2, so I'm just slip stitching through my last 2 new chains, there's the first chain I made off the edge, and I'm going to use that one. I've now arrived back at row 2, so this is that top of that last single crochet I made. So we're working back now across the top of row 2, and this is what it should look like. So you should have this slip stitched tie. See that nice neat edge? There's no ties there, no little bits of string hanging. That's why I like to slip stitch back. So you've got this nice neat tie, and that brings you back to the top of row 2. Row 2, we are just going to continue single crocheting. So you are going to single crochet into that first single crochet, so that first stitch on top of what was the old row 2. This is now technically row 3. Row 3 began with a great big long tie, and now we are working across the top of what was row 2. This is now officially row 3. And you're going to single crochet into each stitch all the way across. Alright, I'm nearing the end of row 3. So just to recap, row 3 began with a long chain of 41. We slip stitched into the second chain from the hook and all the way back to the top of our headband. So that's 40 slip stitches. Then we continued to single crochet across the top. That's an additional 40 single crochets. So row 3 so far is 80 stitches long. But if you're 1 or 2 off, don't worry. This is just a hair tie. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. So this is a great project for scraps and for beginners because it's very forgiving. We're going to continue now. So off the end of row 3, we're going to make tie number 2. So we're going to do exactly the same thing we did off the row of, or off of the second row. We're going to chain 41. 1, 2, 3, 4, 40, 41. There we go. So if you weren't counting, go back and count your chains. You should have 41 chains off the end of row 3. So just sort of like we did with the end of row 2. And you're going to do the same thing. So you're going to skip the first chain and you're going to slip stitch into the second chain from your hook. And you're going to slip stitch into each chain all the way back across that 40 chain length, 41, counting the turning chain. So you'll have 40 slip stitches when you get back to the end of what was row 3 and what is now the beginning of row 4. Okay, I'm just 2 chains away from the end of row 3, so I'm going to just slip stitch into these last 2 chains, and then that's the first sort of stitch of what's going to be the end. That's the last single crochet of row 3, so that's going to be the first proper single crochet of row 4. And what you should have is another slip stitched length of 40 stitches. So you chained 41, slip stitched into the second chain from the hook, slip stitched all the way across, back to the end of the headband. So you've got 40 slip stitches, and now we're going to single crochet all the way across the top of row 4. And this is going to be another 40 stitches, which means that, like row 3, row 4 is 80 stitches in total. And if your ties are one more or one less, don't stress. It's not worth it. This is just a cute little headband, and it's not worth getting upset over. Okay, I'm just coming up on the end of row 4. Now I want you to be aware of where you're putting in your stitches. So once you get close to the end, just take a moment and look at your headband. There's where your tie comes in, and you should have a fairly well-defined stitch at the end. I'm just doing my last 2. So there's 1. This is my last single crochet. So these are all slip stitches right up until the edge. You see that? And that's where they kind of, it looks like the whole thing sort of joins in. That's where I'm putting my last single crochet of my 4th row. Now, because we don't want our tie kind of sitting off on the end, we're going to put in 1 more row. So we're going to chain 1, that's a turning chain because we're still single crocheting. We're going to spin our work around, and we're going to single crochet all the way across the top. For row 5, you will have 40 single crochet stitches, you will have 5 rows, and you will have 2 ties, each of primarily 40 slip stitches each. And if they're 1 more or 1 less, don't worry. And once you're done row 5, you're done your headband. I'm just coming up on the end of my 5th row, and kind of like the last row, you're dealing with the sort of an edge and a tie. So take a moment, make sure you look at your headband, identify your nice flat edge and where your tie kind of comes up to meet it. Pick your last single crochet, and I'm just going to work the last 2 stitches, and there we go. That completes my headband. So now I'm going to snip my yarn, fasten off by pulling that little bit of string back through the loop on my hook, all of it, giving it a nice tug. Once you've knotted off your end, it's a good idea to weave them both in. This sort of finishes your work nice and neatly, and it keeps all your little strings from falling out. Then this little technique I'm about to teach you will also help keep your knots from undoing. I know sometimes some yarn doesn't want to stay knotted off like that. So this is a helpful little thing to do. You're going to pick up the first few stitches. You're going to run your needle underneath them, thread up your needle, and pull that string through. Now make sure you don't squeeze your work together. You don't want to cinch it shut. You're going to now skip over top of that last little loop that your yarn has come out, and you're going to weave it back through the rest of them. So skip the last little loop, and then just pull it back. And I usually wiggle it around a little bit just to make sure that I haven't tugged anything out of place. And this essentially locks it in place. So your yarn isn't going to pull out and then pull back out and then undo itself. So that's a really good technique to use, especially when you're dealing with yarn that might be a little soft or kind of smooth or kind of wants to run away and undo itself from the knots that you're trying to keep it in. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the bottom one. And you can do that too. And then I'm going to show you a couple of neat ways that you can decorate your new headband. Okay, as you can see, I've made a handful of these. I'm really loving this design. I have short hair, but I've also had long hair in my life, and I love headbands, and I love headbands that don't have a great big thick thing that runs under the bottom of your head. So I love this design, so I've made several of them. This is the first one I made, and this is another reason I say it's a great scrap project. I have literally used up the tail ends of some balls of cotton that I had. So I got some pink, I have some light pink, got some white in there. And I wasn't totally finished once I had completely folded in all my little edges. I thought, you know, this could use like a little lace edge. What I've done is I've taken a thin sort of mercerized cotton that I had, and I did a little picot stitch all the way around. And a picot stitch is you join your yarn with a single crochet or a slip stitch, you chain 3, and then you single crochet or slip stitch back into the same stitch. It's important that you do one or the other. So let's say we single crochet. Join with a single crochet, chain 3, single crochet back into the same stitch. Single crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the stitch after that, chain 3, and single crochet back into the same stitch. And that's a little picot pattern that you can repeat all the way around the entire outside edge of your headband, and that gives it just almost like a little sweet, kind of like a maid cap, little bit of lacy feel to it. I love this. I wear this a lot, and I love that little sort of sweet feminine edge that it has. That's that one. Now, if you're not totally into the fluffy, lacy edges, you can leave it plain, and these make great headbands for working around the house, keeping your hair out of your face, so you don't have to go all out. This is just sort of a super useful thing if you want to have it just to sort of throw on. But if you still want to decorate it and you don't want lace, I would like to highly recommend some more of our cute little crocheted appliques. So I've got a heart. I might put the heart actually on this blue one because I think that's pretty. But you could do a flower, or 2 flowers, or 3 flowers. You could do them right across the top. You could do a whole bunch and completely fill it. And for anybody who's a Frozen fan, you could make a cute little snowflake, and you could sew that with a pretty crystal button right in the middle, or crystal bead, onto the side of your headband, or fill it if you like. In short, you can put buttons and beads, you can put little fabric yo-yos, you could pretty much cover these things with anything you want. Treat your little headband like it's a blank canvas, and you can build anything you want on it. I'm thinking for this blue one that I made, I'm going to add blue kitten ears, kind of like that cat headband I made a little while back in the dead of winter. Who says the spring isn't a good time to wear cat ears? So maybe next time you see me, I'll have some blue cat ears on. I hope that inspired you to decorate your little headbands in a way that would fit your personality and your wardrobe. And there you go. That's how you make a simple cotton headband with ties. You can make them pretty, you can decorate them, or you can leave them plain. It's up to you and your own fashion sense. If you're not shy, I would love it if you would post pictures of your hairbands or anything else you make using our tutorials and patterns, and you can post them, tag me at Jayda InStitches, and you can put them on Google+, on Facebook, on Instagram, and even Pinterest, and I will be sure to see them, and I will love to see them because that makes me so happy. Please remember to like our videos and share them with your friends, and if you haven't already subscribed, you can hit that subscribe button down below and never miss another minute of fun at the Jayda InStitches show. Well, that rhymed. Anyway, that's it for this week, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you again really, really soon. Bye!